bullet struck the door frame 3 inches from Rose Garrison's head, splintering the wood and sending her stumbling backward into the small telegraph office where she had worked for the past 2 years in Taylorsville, Utah. She hit the floor hard, her heart hammering against her ribs as angry voices erupted outside. It was 1882, and violence had followed her here just as it had followed her across 3 territories. She pressed herself against the wall beneath the window, breathing hard, waiting for the shooting to stop. This was why she had built walls around her heart. This was why she refused to let anyone close. Love meant loss, and loss meant the kind of pain that carved you hollow and left you empty. When the gunfire finally ceased, and the marshal's voice called out that it was safe, Rose stood on shaking legs and dusted off her dark blue skirt. Her fingers trembled as she smoothed back the honey-colored hair that had escaped her careful bun. She was 24 years old and had already buried a father, a mother, and a younger brother. She had watched her childhood home burn to ashes after a range war in Wyoming. She had learned that caring about people, loving them, only meant watching them disappear. "Miss Garrison, you all right in there?" Marshal Hendricks called through the door. "I am fine," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She walked to the doorway and looked out at the dusty main street of Taylorsville. 2 men lay dead in the dirt, and a third was being dragged away by his companions. What happened? Cattle dispute turned deadly. Johnson boys tangled with some drovers passing through. The marshal tipped his hat to her. "Sorry you got caught in the crossfire, Miss Garrison. You sure you're all right?" "Perfectly well, Marshal. Thank you." She closed the door and returned to her desk, sitting down and staring at the telegraph key without really seeing it. Her hands had stopped shaking, but something inside her chest felt tight and cold, another reminder that this world was brutal and unforgiving, another reason to keep her distance from everyone around her. The door opened again, and Rose looked up sharply, one hand instinctively reaching for the small pistol she kept in her desk drawer, but it was only Clara Simmons, the seamstress who lived in the boarding house next door. "Rose, I saw what happened from my window. Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." Rose relaxed slightly but did not smile. She never smiled much these days. Clara was a kind woman in her 50s, with gray, streaked brown hair and a gentle manner that Rose found both comforting and unsettling. Comfort meant lowering your guard, and lowering your guard meant vulnerability. "You should go home and rest. That must have been terrifying. I have work to do. The afternoon train will arrive soon, and there will be messages to send. Rose, you cannot just pretend nothing happened." "I can, and I will." Rose turned back to her telegraph, effectively dismissing her friend. Clara sighed but left without further argument. She knew Rose well enough by now to recognize when the younger woman had closed herself off completely. The afternoon passed slowly. Rose sent 3 telegrams, received 2, and spent the rest of her time organizing the small office with meticulous care. Order and routine were her anchors. They kept her grounded when everything else felt uncertain and dangerous. As the sun began to set, painting the Utah sky in shades of orange and purple, Rose locked the telegraph office and walked the 3 blocks to the boarding house where she rented a small room. She kept her head down, acknowledged no one, and climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor without stopping to chat with the other residents. In her room, she removed her hat and sat on the edge of her narrow bed, staring at the faded wallpaper. This was her life now. Solitary. Safe. Emotionless. It was the only way she knew how to survive. The next morning dawned clear and warm, typical for late spring in Utah. Rose dressed carefully in a gray skirt and white shirtwaist, pinned her hair into its usual severe bun, and walked to work just as the town was beginning to stir. The bodies from yesterday's shooting had been removed, but dark stains remained in the dirt as a grim reminder. She unlocked the telegraph office and had just settled at her desk when she heard horses outside. Through the window, she saw a group of cowboys riding into town, their horses dusty and tired-looking. Drovers probably bringing cattle through to the railhead. Rose had seen hundreds of such men over the years. They were all the same. rough and crude, interested only in whiskey, gambling, and loose women before moving on to the next town. She turned her attention to the telegraph, tapping out a message for a merchant requesting supplies from Salt Lake City. The bell above the door jangled, and she looked up to see one of the cowboys entering. He removed his hat as he stepped inside, revealing dark brown hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of weathered oak. He was tall, probably just over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of a man who spent his days in the saddle. His face was tanned and lined from sun and wind, and Rose guessed he was somewhere in his late 20s. "Morning, madam," he said, his voice a low rumble with a hint of Texas drawl. "I need to send a telegram to Fort Worth." "Of course." Rose pulled out a message form and dipped her pen in ink. "What would you like to say?" He dictated a brief message to someone named Samuel Bradley, informing him that the cattle drive was on schedule and they would arrive in 2 weeks. Rose wrote it down in her neat script, counted the words, and quoted him the price. He paid without complaint, his calloused fingers dropping coins into her palm. "Thank you, madam. Appreciate your help." Rose nodded, but said nothing. She turned to the telegraph and began tapping out the message, aware that the cowboy had not immediately left. After a moment, she looked up. "Was there something else?" "Just wondering if you're all right. I heard about the shooting yesterday, heard a young woman nearly got killed in the telegraph office." "I was not nearly killed. The bullet missed me by a considerable distance." 3 inches is not what I would call considerable, madam." Rose felt a flash of irritation. "Were you there? Did you measure it yourself?" A faint smile touched his lips. "No, madam. But talk travels fast in a town this size. Name is Owen Brennan, by the way. I am trail boss for the Double R Ranch out of Texas. We are bringing 1,500 head through to the railhead." "I did not ask for your life story, Mr. Brennan. Your telegram will be sent within the hour." The smile faded from his face, replaced by something that might have been disappointment or perhaps just polite confusion. "All right then. Thank you for your help, Miss Garrison." "Miss Garrison." He put his hat back on, tipped it to her, and left the office. Rose immediately felt guilty for her rudeness, then dismissed the feeling. Better to be rude than to encourage conversation. Conversation led to familiarity, and familiarity led to caring, and caring led to loss. She had learned that lesson too many times to forget it now. She sent Owen Brennan's telegram and then busied herself with other work. But throughout the day, she found her thoughts drifting back to the tall cowboy with the kind eyes and Texas drawl. She told herself it meant nothing. He would be gone in a few days, just another stranger passing through her life. That evening, as Rose was preparing to close the office, Owen Brennan returned. He stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands, looking uncertain. "Miss Garrison, I wanted to apologize if I overstepped this morning. I did not mean to pry into your business." Rose was so surprised that she actually paused in her task of covering the telegraph. "That is not necessary, Mr. Brennan." "I think it is. You made it clear you wanted to be left alone, and I should have respected that right off." "Well, thank you for the apology." Rose turned back to her work, expecting him to leave. Instead, he lingered. "Can I ask you something, Miss Garrison?" She sighed. "I suppose I cannot stop you." "Why are you so determined to push people away?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Rose gripped the edge of her desk, her knuckles white. "That is none of your concern." "Maybe not. But I have been watching people for a lot of years, and I recognize someone running from something when I see them. You know nothing about me." "I know you are scared. I just cannot figure out what of." Rose spun to face him, anger flaring hot in her chest. "You presume too much, Mr. Brennan. I am not scared of anything. I simply prefer my own company to that of strangers who think they have the right to interrogate me about my personal life." "Fair enough." He put his hat back on, but his eyes remained steady on hers. "But for what it is worth, Miss Garrison, whatever happened to you in the past does not have to define your future. Sometimes the thing we are most afraid of is exactly what we need." He left before she could formulate a reply. Rose stood frozen in the empty office, her heart pounding, her hands trembling with a mixture of rage and something else she refused to name. How dare he? How dare he come into her office and her life and presume to understand her? She locked up quickly and hurried back to the boarding house, ignoring Clara's friendly greeting from the parlor. In her room, she paced back and forth, too agitated to sit still. Owen Brennan's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes the thing we are most afraid of is exactly what we need. What nonsense, what utter nonsense. She did not need love. She did not need companionship. She needed safety and solitude, the only things that had never betrayed her. But as she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, she could not shake the memory of his face. There had been no judgment in his eyes, only a quiet understanding that made her feel exposed and vulnerable. She hated that feeling. She had spent years building her walls, and he had managed to shake their foundations in the span of 2 brief conversations. Rose decided she would avoid Owen Brennan for the rest of his time in Taylorsville. It should not be difficult. The town was small, but she kept to a predictable routine, and he would surely be busy with his cattle and his men. She could go back to her orderly, solitary life and forget about cowboys with knowing eyes and gentle voices. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The next morning, Rose was walking to the telegraph office when she saw a commotion near the livery stable. A horse had broken loose and was running wild through the street, panicked and dangerous. People scrambled out of the way, and Rose pressed herself against the wall of the general store. The horse was heading straight for a small boy who stood frozen in the middle of the street, too frightened to move. Rose did not think. She ran forward, grabbed the boy, and pulled him out of the way just as the horse thundered past. They tumbled together into the dirt, and Rose felt the wind from the animal's passing ruffle her hair. Her heart hammered as she held the child close, both of them breathing hard. "Are you all right?" she asked, pulling back to look at him. He was perhaps 6 years old, with wide brown eyes and tears streaming down his dirty face. He nodded, unable to speak. Someone caught the horse, and suddenly there were people everywhere, helping Rose to her feet, checking on the boy, exclaiming over her bravery. She brushed off their praise and concern, more interested in making sure the child was unharmed. His mother came running, a young woman with hair the same shade as her son's, and swept him into her arms with sobs of relief. "Thank you," she gasped, looking at Rose with tear-filled eyes. "Thank you so much. He just ran out before I could stop him. He is fine. No harm done." "You could have been killed. You are a hero." Rose shook her head, uncomfortable with the attention. "I am not. Anyone would have done the same." "Not everyone," said a familiar voice behind her. Rose turned to see Owen Brennan standing there, his expression serious. "That took real courage, Miss Garrison." "It took no such thing. It was instinct." She tried to push past him, but he caught her arm gently. "You are shaking." She was. Now that the immediate danger had passed, reaction was setting in. Her legs felt weak, and her hands would not stop trembling. "I am fine. Let me walk you to your office." "That is not necessary." "I know it is not necessary. I am offering anyway." His hand remained on her arm, steady and warm, and Rose found she did not have the strength to argue. She let him guide her through the crowd, away from the concerned voices and curious stares. They walked in silence to the telegraph office, and Owen opened the door for her. Inside, he helped her to her chair and then looked around. "Do you have any coffee?" "There's a pot on the stove in the back. I usually make it when I arrive." "I will do it." He disappeared into the small back room, and Rose heard him working with the stove and the coffee pot. She sat at her desk, trying to calm her racing heart. The boy was fine. She was fine. Everything was fine. But her mind kept replaying the moment when she had seen the horse bearing down on that small, frozen figure. What if she had not been fast enough? What if the horse had struck them both? Owen returned with 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. She took it gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm ceramic. He pulled up a chair and sat across from her, his long legs stretched out in front of him. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the coffee and for helping me back here." "You're welcome." He sipped his own coffee, studying her over the rim of the cup. "That was a brave thing you did. You already said that." "Because it is true. Most people would have frozen or run away. You ran toward the danger." "I did not think about it. There was no time." "Exactly. You just acted." "That says something about the kind of person you are, Miss Garrison." Rose did not know how to respond to that. She drank her coffee and tried to ignore the way his presence made her feel both nervous and oddly comforted. After a few moments of silence, she said, "You should not neglect your work on my account, Mr. Brennan. I am sure you have responsibilities with your cattle." "My segundo can handle things for an hour. I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I have already told you I am fine. And I have already told you I recognize someone running from something when I see them." His voice was gentle, not accusatory. "What happened to you, Rose?" The use of her first name should have angered her. Instead, it made something inside her chest crack just a little. She set down her coffee cup with careful precision. "Why do you care?" "I do not rightly know, but I do." Rose looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw genuine concern in his face. It unnerved her more than anything else could have. She was accustomed to indifference, to people who accepted her coldness and moved on. She was not accustomed to someone who persisted despite her best efforts to push them away. "My father was killed in a land dispute when I was 18, she heard herself say, the words coming out before she could stop them. "Men shot him in front of our house while my mother and brother and I watched from the window. My mother died of grief 6 months later. Just gave up and stopped living. My brother and I tried to keep the ranch going, but we lost everything in a drought. Then he got sick with fever and died when I was 20. I have been on my own ever since." Owen's expression had gone soft with sympathy. "I am sorry. That is a lot of loss for one person to bear." "It is what it is. I learned that caring about people only leads to pain, so I stopped caring." "Did you? Stop caring?" "Yes." "Then why did you risk your life for that boy today?" Rose opened her mouth to reply, then closed it again. She had no answer. Owen leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Maybe you did not stop caring, Rose. Maybe you just stopped letting yourself feel it because it hurts too much." "What is the difference?" "The difference is that one can be changed. One can be healed." "I do not want to be healed. I want to be left alone." "Do you? Really?" He held her gaze, and Rose felt that crack in her chest widen a little more. "Because from where I am sitting, it looks like you are just lonely and scared and trying desperately to convince yourself that is what you want." Rose stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. "You have no right to speak to me this way. You know nothing about me, nothing about my life." "Then tell me I am wrong. Look me in the eye and tell me you are happy living this way, keeping everyone at arm's length, going through each day like you are already dead inside. Get out." "Rose, get out." Her voice broke on the words, and to her horror, she felt tears burning behind her eyes. She turned away, pressing her hands flat on her desk, fighting for control. She heard Owen stand, heard his boots on the floor as he moved toward the door, but then he stopped. "I am leaving town in a week. The cattle will be loaded and shipped east, and I will head back to Texas. If you want to talk before then, I will be staying at the hotel. But even if you do not, I want you to know something. What happened to you was not your fault. Loving people and losing them does not mean you should stop loving. It just means you were lucky enough to have something worth grieving." The door closed softly behind him. Rose stood frozen at her desk, tears streaming down her face, her carefully constructed walls crumbling around her. She sank back into her chair and buried her face in her hands, sobbing with a grief she had not allowed herself to feel in 4 long years. For the next 2 days, Rose avoided Owen Brennan as much as possible. She saw him occasionally on the street, always with his men or conducting business, and each time she quickly looked away. But his words haunted her. What happened to you was not your fault. Loving people and losing them does not mean you should stop loving. It just means you were lucky enough to have something worth grieving. She thought about her father's laugh, the way he used to swing her around when she was a child. She thought about her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair, singing old Irish songs in the kitchen. She thought about her brother's mischievous grin, the way he could always make her smile even on the darkest days. She had loved them. She had loved them so much that their loss had nearly destroyed her. But Owen was right. She had been lucky to have them, even if only for a while. On the third day after their conversation, Rose closed the telegraph office early and walked to the hotel. Her heart hammered with each step, and she nearly turned back 3 times. But something stronger than her fear drove her forward. She found Owen in the hotel restaurant, eating dinner alone. He looked up when she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Miss Garrison." "Rose. You called me Rose before. You might as well continue." He stood, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Would you like to join me?" She sat before she could change her mind. Owen signaled the waiter and ordered coffee for her. They sat in silence for a moment, Rose trying to find the right words, Owen waiting patiently. "I owe you an apology," she finally said. "You were only trying to help, and I was rude and ungrateful." "You do not owe me anything." "Yes, I do. You saw something in me that I have been trying to hide for years, and it frightened me. Still frightens me, if I'm being honest." "What frightens you exactly?" Rose looked down at her hands folded in her lap. "The idea that I might care about someone again, the idea that I might let someone close enough to hurt me. I know it sounds cowardly, but the thought of going through that kind of loss again terrifies me more than anything else in this world." "It does not sound cowardly, it sounds human." Owen reached across the table and gently covered her hands with one of his own. His touch was warm and calloused and surprisingly gentle. "But Rose, living in fear is not really living at all. I know something about that myself." "What do you mean?" He withdrew his hand and sat back, his expression distant. "I was married once. Her name was Elizabeth. We met when I was 22, and I thought she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. We got married 3 months later, young and foolish and convinced we would live forever. But she died in childbirth the next year. The baby too, a little girl we never got to name." Rose felt her throat tighten with sympathy. "Owen, I am so sorry." "It was 7 years ago, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. For a long time after, I felt like you do now. I thought the only way to protect myself was to never let anyone close. I worked myself half to death, took every dangerous job I could find, and told myself I was better off alone. But you know what I learned?" "What?" "That grief is the price we pay for love, and it is worth paying. Elizabeth and I only had a year together, but it was the best year of my life. And if I could go back and choose whether to love her and lose her or never know her at all, I would choose to love her every single time. Because that year gave me something precious. It taught me what it means to truly live, to truly connect with another person. And when she died, when I lost everything, it also taught me that I was stronger than I thought. That I could survive even the worst pain and come out the other side." Tears were sliding down Rose's cheeks again, but this time she did not try to hide them. "How did you find the courage to open your heart again?" "I realized that the alternative was worse. Living alone, never taking risks, never feeling anything, that is not courage, Rose. That is just a slow death. Real courage is being willing to feel, to connect, to love, even knowing it might hurt. Real courage is choosing life over fear." Rose wiped her eyes with her napkin, her hands shaking. "I do not know if I can do that." "Yes, you can. You already did when you saved that boy. You did not think about the risk or the danger. You just acted from your heart. That is who you really are underneath all those walls you have built. They talked for hours that evening, long after the restaurant had emptied and the staff began cleaning up around them. Owen told her about his childhood in Texas, about his family's small ranch and his decision to become a drover. Rose found herself telling him things she had never told anyone, about her dreams of becoming a teacher before her father died, about the guilt she still carried over surviving when her family had not. It felt strange and terrifying and wonderful all at once to be so open with another person. When they finally left the hotel, the moon was high and bright, casting silver light over the quiet streets of Taylorsville. Owen walked her back to the boarding house, and they stood on the porch steps, neither quite ready to say goodnight. "Thank you for tonight," Rose said softly, "for listening, for sharing your own story. Thank you for giving me a chance. I know it was not easy for you." "No, but it was worth it." She hesitated, then added, "When do you leave?" 4 days. The cattle will be loaded onto the train on Friday, and I will head back to Texas on Saturday. 4 days. Rose felt a strange tightness in her chest at the thought. "I suppose you're eager to get home." "Part of me is, but another part is not so eager anymore." He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Rose, I know this is sudden, and I know you have every reason to be cautious, but I would like to spend more time with you before I leave, if you are willing." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to protect herself, to retreat behind her walls, but she thought about what Owen had said. Real courage is choosing life over fear. She took a deep breath and nodded. "I would like that too." His smile was like sunrise, warm and bright and full of promise. "Tomorrow evening, then? After you close the office?" "Yes, tomorrow evening." He tipped his hat to her and walked away, and Rose stood on the porch for a long moment watching him disappear into the darkness. Her heart was racing and her hands were trembling, but for the first time in years she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The next day seemed to last forever. Rose went through the motions of her work, sending telegrams and receiving messages, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about Owen constantly, about the warmth in his eyes and the gentleness in his voice. She thought about his story, about the tragedy he had survived, and the courage it had taken for him to open his heart again. And she thought about her own life, about the years she had spent hiding from her feelings, convincing herself that safety was more important than happiness. When evening finally arrived, Rose closed the office with unusual eagerness. She hurried back to the boarding house and changed into her best dress, a soft green cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She brushed out her hair and repinned it, allowing a few loose curls to frame her face. Clara knocked on her door as she was finishing, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Rose Garrison, are you going somewhere special?" Rose felt her cheeks flush. "I'm having dinner with someone." "Someone, you mean a man?" "Yes, Clara, a man. His name is Owen Brennan, and he is a trail boss from Texas." Clara's face lit up with delight. "Rose, this is wonderful. I have been hoping you would find someone. You are too young and beautiful to spend all your time alone." "It is just dinner. Do not make more of it than it is." "Of course, dear, just dinner." But Clara's knowing smile suggested she thought otherwise. Owen was waiting for Rose on the porch of the hotel, dressed in clean clothes with his hair freshly combed. He smiled when he saw her approaching, and Rose felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with fear. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look very nice yourself." They ate dinner at the hotel again, but this time the conversation flowed easily. Rose found herself laughing at Owen's stories about life on the trail, about stubborn cattle and ornery cowboys, and unexpected adventures. He had a gift for storytelling, painting vivid pictures with his words, and Rose was charmed despite herself. After dinner, they walked through the town, enjoying the cool evening air. Owen offered her his arm, and Rose took it, feeling the solid strength of him beside her. They talked about everything and nothing, about their pasts and their dreams for the future. Rose admitted that she had once wanted to travel east, to see the ocean and the big cities. Owen told her about the vast Texas plains, about sunsets that painted the whole sky in shades of red and gold. It sounds beautiful, Rose said wistfully. It is, but it can be lonely too. That much space, that much emptiness. Sometimes I think that is why I took to driving cattle. It gave me an excuse to keep moving, to never stay in one place long enough to feel the loneliness. And now? Now I'm not so sure I want to keep running. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Rose, I know we have only known each other a few days. I know you have no reason to trust me or believe me, but I need you to know that I have not felt this way about anyone since Elizabeth died. Being with you, talking to you, it makes me feel alive again. It makes me remember what it is like to hope for something more than just getting through each day. Rose's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Owen, I feel the same way, and that terrifies me. I know, but you do not have to be afraid. I would never hurt you, Rose, not intentionally. You cannot promise that. No one can. Life is unpredictable. People die, things change. I could lose you just like I lost everyone else. You could. And I could lose you. That is the risk we take when we open our hearts. But Rose, the alternative is to never feel anything at all. To go through life numb and isolated. Is that really what you want? She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. No, but I do not know how to stop being afraid. You do not have to stop being afraid. You just have to be brave enough to feel it and move forward anyway. He cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I am scared too, Rose. Scared of losing someone again, scared of getting hurt. But I am more scared of letting fear rob me of this chance, of letting you slip away because I was too much of a coward to take a risk. What are you saying? I am saying that I am falling in love with you. I know it is fast. I know it is crazy. It is, but it is true. And I think maybe you are feeling something for me too. Rose could not deny it. Against all logic, against all her carefully constructed defenses, she was falling for this gentle cowboy who had seen past her walls and refused to give up on her. I am, she whispered. I am feeling something. Something I swore I would never feel again. Then give us a chance. Give me a chance to show you that love does not have to be terrifying, that it can be gentle and patient and safe. But you're leaving in 3 days. Then come with me. Rose's eyes widened. What? Come with me to Texas. Be my wife. Build a life with me on the ranch. I know it is asking a lot. I know it is fast. But Rose, I do not want to leave you here. I do not want to wonder what might have been. I want to take this chance while we have it. Rose's mind was spinning. Leave Taylorsville? Leave the safety of her routine and her small, controlled life? Marry a man she had known less than a week? It was insane. It was reckless. It was everything she had sworn she would never do. But as she looked into Owen's eyes, as she felt the warmth of his hands on her face, she realized something. She was tired of being afraid, tired of living half a life, going through the motions without ever really feeling anything. Owen was offering her a chance at something real, something precious. And yes, it was terrifying. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the things worth having were always terrifying. I need time to think, she said finally. This is such a big decision, Owen. I cannot just throw away everything I have built here on an impulse. What have you built here, Rose? A job you could find anywhere? A room in a boarding house? Friends you keep at arm's length? His voice was gentle, not critical. I am not trying to belittle your life. I am just asking you to consider whether it is really what you want, or just what you settled for because it felt safe. Rose knew he was right, but the thought of uprooting herself, of trusting another person so completely, still filled her with dread. Give me until Friday, until the day before you leave. I will have an answer for you then. All right, take all the time you need. But Rose, whatever you decide, I want you to know that meeting you has changed me. You have reminded me what it means to feel, to care, to want something more than just survival. And for that, I will always be grateful." He walked her back to the boarding house, and they stood on the porch steps as they had the night before. But this time, when he turned to leave, Rose reached out and caught his hand. "Owen, thank you for being patient with me, for not giving up." He squeezed her hand gently. "I could never give up on you, Rose. You are worth fighting for, even if you do not believe it yet." He kissed her forehead, a soft, chaste touch that nevertheless sent warmth flooding through her. Then he was gone, disappearing into the night, and Rose was left standing alone with her thoughts and her fears and the fragile, terrifying hope blooming in her chest. The next 2 days were agony. Rose went through her work mechanically, unable to focus on anything except Owen's proposal. She spent hours weighing her options, listing the risks and benefits in her mind. On one hand, staying in Taylorsville meant safety and predictability. She knew what each day would bring, knew how to navigate her small world without getting hurt. On the other hand, it also meant loneliness and emotional emptiness. It meant watching life pass her by from a safe distance, never really participating, never really living. Going with Owen meant risking everything. It meant trusting another person with her heart, knowing that she could lose him at any time. It meant leaving behind the familiar and venturing into the unknown. But it also meant a chance at real happiness, at love and companionship, and a full, rich life. It meant choosing courage over fear. Clara noticed Rose's distraction and finally cornered her on Thursday evening. "All right, what is going on? You have been walking around like a ghost for 2 days." Rose sank onto the sofa in the boarding house parlor and told Clara everything. About Owen's proposal, about her fear of losing someone else, about the impossible choice she faced. Clara listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When Rose finished, Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I tell you something about my life, Rose? I was married once, many years ago. His name was Henry, and I loved him with all my heart. We had 5 beautiful years together before he died in a mining accident. The grief nearly killed me. I thought I would never be happy again, never feel whole again, and for a long time I was not. But eventually I realized something. Those 5 years with Henry were worth all the pain that came after. They were worth everything. And if I had known from the beginning that I would lose him, I still would have chosen to love him. Because love, real love, is the most precious thing in this world. It is what makes us human. It is what gives life meaning." Tears were streaming down Rose's face. "But what if I cannot survive losing him? What if it breaks me? Then you will pick up the pieces and keep going just like I did, just like you did when you lost your family. You are stronger than you think, Rose, and you deserve to be happy. You deserve to take this chance." "I am so scared, Clara." "I know, dear, but being scared does not mean you cannot be brave. Sometimes being brave means doing the thing that terrifies you most." Rose hugged Clara tightly, drawing comfort from the older woman's warmth and wisdom. When she pulled back, she felt calmer, more centered. "Thank you for listening, for understanding. That is what friends are for. Now what are you going to tell him?" Rose took a deep breath. "I am going to say yes." Clara's face broke into a radiant smile. "Oh, Rose, I am so happy for you. This is exactly what you need." "I hope you are right, because I am about to turn my entire life upside down. The best things in life usually involve a little upheaval. Trust me on that." Rose spent that night packing her few belongings and writing a letter of resignation to the telegraph company. She had very little to take with her, just clothes and a few personal items, the remnants of a life she had kept deliberately small and uncomplicated. As she folded her dresses and wrapped her mother's china teacup in newspaper, she felt both terrified and exhilarated. She was really doing this. She was choosing love over fear, hope over safety. The next morning, Rose went to the telegraph office for the last time. She sent her resignation letter and spent the day training her replacement, a young man fresh from Salt Lake City. She said goodbye to the merchants and townspeople she had worked with for 2 years, accepting their good wishes and surprise congratulations. News of her engagement had spread quickly, as news always did in small towns, and everyone seemed genuinely happy for her. That evening, Rose dressed carefully in her green dress and walked to the hotel. Owen was waiting for her outside, his expression anxious. When he saw her approach, he straightened, his eyes searching her face. "Rose." "Owen." She took his hands in hers, feeling their warmth and strength. "I have thought about your proposal. I have thought about little else for the past 2 days." "And?" "And my answer is yes, I will marry you. I will come to Texas with you. I will take this chance, even though it terrifies me." The joy that blazed across Owen's face was like nothing Rose had ever seen. He swept her into his arms, lifting her off the ground and spinning her around. "You have just made me the happiest man alive, Rose Garrison. I hope I do not regret this." "You will not. I promise you will not." He set her down gently, his hands framing her face. "I love you, Rose. I know I said it before, but I need to say it again. I love you with all my heart, and I will spend the rest of my life showing you that love does not have to be something to fear." "I love you too," Rose whispered, and it felt like breaking a curse, like shattering the chains that had bound her for so long. "I love you, Owen Brennan, and I am choosing to trust you with my heart." He kissed her then, a gentle, reverent kiss that tasted of promise and hope. Rose melted into him, letting herself feel the full force of her emotions for the first time in years. It was overwhelming and frightening and absolutely wonderful. They were married the next morning by the town minister, with Clara and a few of Owen's men as witnesses. Rose wore her mother's wedding ring, which she had carried with her all these years, and Owen produced a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. The ceremony was short and sweet, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Rose felt something shift inside her. A weight she had been carrying for years finally lifted. They left Taylorsville that afternoon, riding in a wagon filled with Rose's belongings and supplies for the journey. Owen's men had already departed with the cattle, but Owen had stayed behind to wait for Rose's answer. Now they would travel together, taking their time, stopping in small towns along the way. As they rode out of Taylorsville, Rose looked back one last time at the town that had been her refuge for 2 years. She felt a pang of sadness, but also a surge of excitement. She was leaving behind safety and solitude, but she was gaining something far more valuable. She was gaining a partner, a companion, a chance at real happiness. The journey to Texas took 3 weeks. They traveled slowly, enjoying each other's company, learning about each other in the intimate way that only travel allows. Owen was patient and kind, never pushing Rose beyond what she was comfortable with. He seemed to understand that she needed time to adjust to this new reality, to let go of her fears and embrace her new life. They talked endlessly about everything and nothing. Owen told Rose about his ranch, about the land his father had claimed and built up over 30 years. It was not a large spread, just a few hundred acres, but it was good land with water and grass and room to grow. His parents were gone now, but his younger sister lived nearby with her husband and children. He spoke of them with obvious affection, and Rose felt both nervous and eager to meet them. Rose told Owen more about her past, about the happy memories she had spent years trying to bury. She talked about her father's kindness, her mother's strength, her brother's humor. It hurt to remember, but it also felt healing, like lancing a wound that had festered too long. Owen listened without judgment, offering comfort when she cried and encouragement when she faltered. At night, they stayed in small hotels or camped under the stars. Owen was respectful of Rose's boundaries, never pressuring her for more than she was ready to give. But slowly, gradually, Rose found herself relaxing in his presence. She began to trust that he truly cared for her, that he was not going to hurt her or leave her. And with that trust came a growing desire to be closer to him, to fully embrace the physical side of their marriage. One night, about 2 weeks into their journey, they made camp beside a small stream. The stars were brilliant overhead, and the air was warm and fragrant with sagebrush. Owen built a fire and made dinner while Rose unpacked their bedrolls. After they ate, they sat side by side, watching the flames dance and listening to the night sounds of insects and distant coyotes. "Owen," Rose said quietly. "Yes?" "I think I am ready to be your wife in every sense." He turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "Are you sure?" "There is no rush, Rose. We have all the time in the world. I am sure. I want this. I want you." He kissed her then, slow and deep, and Rose felt desire kindle in her belly. They made love that night under the stars, and it was tender and sweet, and everything Rose had been afraid to hope for. Afterward, she lay in Owen's arms, listening to his heartbeat, feeling safe and cherished in a way she had not felt since she was a child. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too, Rose. So much." They arrived at Owen's ranch on a bright afternoon in early summer. The land was beautiful. Rolling hills covered in golden grass with a small river winding through the property. The ranch house was modest but well built, a sturdy wooden structure with a wide porch and a stone chimney. Rose felt a rush of emotion as Owen helped her down from the wagon. This was her home now. This was where she would build her new life. Owen's sister Margaret arrived the next day with her husband Thomas and their 3 children. Margaret was a plump, cheerful woman with Owen's dark hair and warm eyes. She embraced Rose like a long-lost friend, exclaiming over her beauty and welcoming her to the family with genuine warmth. The children were equally friendly. Curious about their new aunt and full of questions, Rose found herself relaxing in their company, charmed by their easy affection and lively conversation. Margaret insisted on helping Rose settle into the house, showing her where everything was and offering advice on managing a ranch household. Thomas and Owen rode out to check the cattle, and Rose spent the afternoon with Margaret, drinking tea and talking about everything from recipes to child rearing. "I am so glad Owen found you," Margaret said, as they sat on the porch watching the children play in the yard. "He has been alone for too long. After Elizabeth died, I thought he would never let anyone close again, but you have changed that. I can see it in his eyes. He is happy again. I hope I can make him happy. I am still learning how to be a wife, how to let myself love without fear." We are all learning all the time, Rose. Marriage is not about being perfect. It is about choosing each other every day, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Rose thought about those words often in the weeks and months that followed. Life on the ranch was not easy. There was always work to be done, from cooking and cleaning to tending the garden and helping with the animals. Rose had never worked so hard in her life, but she also had never been happier. There was something deeply satisfying about building a life with Owen, about working side by side toward common goals. They fell into a comfortable rhythm. Owen would wake before dawn to tend the cattle, and Rose would make breakfast and pack his lunch. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk about their day, making plans for the future. On Sundays, they would ride into town for church and visit with neighbors. It was a simple life, but it was full of small joys and quiet contentments. As summer turned to fall, Rose began to notice changes in her body. She was tired more often, and certain smells made her feel queasy. She suspected what it meant, but was almost afraid to hope. When she finally worked up the courage to tell Owen, he was overjoyed. "A baby? Rose, we are going to have a baby?" "Yes, in the spring, I think." He swept her into his arms, tears streaming down his face. "This is the best news I have ever received. I cannot believe it. We are going to be parents." Rose felt her own tears fall, but they were tears of happiness, not fear. "I am scared, Owen. After what happened to Elizabeth, I cannot help but be afraid. I am scared too, but we will get through this together. I will be with you every step of the way, and we have Margaret and the doctor in town. You are not alone, Rose. You will never be alone again. The pregnancy was difficult. Rose was sick for the first few months and then exhausted for the remainder. But Owen was true to his word, never leaving her side unless absolutely necessary. He hired a woman from town to help with the housework and forbade Rose from doing any heavy lifting. Margaret visited frequently, bringing food and advice and cheerful company. As Rose's belly grew, so did her confidence. She was going to be a mother. She was going to bring new life into the world. And yes, it was terrifying, but it was also miraculous. She thought about her own mother often, wishing she could have lived to see this day to meet her grandchild. But she felt her mother's presence in quiet moments, a gentle reassurance that everything would be all right. The baby came on a warm April morning. The labor was long and painful, and there were moments when Rose was sure she would not survive. But Owen held her hand through it all, whispering encouragement, telling her how strong she was, how much he loved her. And when their son finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Rose felt a love so fierce and overwhelming that it took her breath away. "We have a boy," Owen said, his voice choked with emotion. "Rose, we have a son." "A son," Rose repeated, cradling the tiny bundle in her arms. "Owen, he is beautiful. He is perfect, just like his mother." They named him William after Owen's father and called him Will for short. He was a healthy, happy baby with Owen's dark hair and Rose's green eyes. Rose had never known it was possible to love someone so much, so instantly. Every time she looked at Will, she felt her heart expand. But with that love came a resurgence of her old fears. What if something happened to Will? What if she lost him the way she had lost her family? The thought kept her awake at night, checking on him constantly, panicking at every small cough or sniffle. Owen noticed her anxiety and gently confronted her about it one evening. "Rose, you cannot spend every moment worrying about losing him. That is no way to live." "I cannot help it. Every time I close my eyes, I imagine something terrible happening. What if he gets sick? What if there is an accident? What if we focus on the present instead of borrowing trouble from the future?" Owen took her hands, his expression serious. "Rose, I understand your fear. I truly do. But you cannot let it control your life. Will is healthy and strong. We are taking good care of him. And whatever happens, we will face it together. I just love him so much. I did not know it was possible to feel this way. I know. I feel the same way. But love is not about fear and control. It is about trust and faith. We have to trust that we are doing our best and have faith that everything will work out." Rose knew he was right. She was letting her old fears poison her joy in motherhood. She made a conscious effort to relax, to enjoy each moment with Will instead of worrying about what might go wrong. It was not easy, but with Owen's help, she slowly learned to let go of her anxiety and embrace the present. As Will grew from a baby into a toddler, Rose found herself healing in ways she had not expected. Watching her son explore the world with fearless curiosity reminded her of what it meant to be fully alive. He was not afraid of falling or getting hurt. He simply got up and tried again, his laughter ringing through the house. Rose wanted to be like that, to approach life with courage instead of fear. 2 years after Will was born, Rose discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and she was less anxious. She had survived childbirth once and had gained confidence in her own strength. Their daughter, Emma, was born on a snowy December morning. She was smaller than Will had been, with fine blonde hair and Owen's brown eyes. Rose fell in love with her instantly, marveling at the miracle of this tiny person. Life on the ranch grew busier with 2 young children, but Rose thrived on the chaos. She loved the noise and the mess and the constant activity. Her days were full of laughter and love, of small moments that added up to a rich and meaningful life. She thought sometimes about the person she had been when she first met Owen, that frightened, closed-off woman who was so afraid of living. She barely recognized that version of herself now. Owen was a wonderful father, patient and playful, and endlessly devoted to his children. He would spend hours playing with them in the yard, teaching Will to ride, and reading bedtime stories to Emma. Rose would watch from the porch, her heart full to bursting with love for her little family. This was what she had been afraid to hope for. This was what she had almost missed by letting fear rule her life. One evening, when Will was 5 and Emma was 3, Rose and Owen sat on the porch after the children were in bed. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Owen took Rose's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Leaving Taylorsville? Taking a chance on me?" Rose turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "Never. Not for a single moment. Marrying you, building this life, it is the best decision I ever made." "Even with all the fear, all the risk?" "Especially with all the fear. You taught me something important, Owen. You taught me that love does not have to be terrifying. That yes, there are risks, and yes, we might lose each other someday. But the alternative is to never love at all, to never really live. And that is no life at all. I would rather have one day of this happiness than a lifetime of safety and loneliness. You have given me so much, Rose, more than I ever dared to hope for, a home, a family, a reason to wake up every morning with joy in my heart. I love you more than I can say." "I love you too. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for showing me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Rose thought about all the years ahead, all the moments they would share, both joyful and sorrowful. Because life was unpredictable. There would be hard times, losses, challenges they could not foresee, but there would also be laughter and love and the kind of deep connection that made everything worthwhile. Rose had learned that love was not something to be feared, but something to be embraced with open arms. It required vulnerability and courage, yes, but it also brought joy and meaning and a sense of belonging she had never known was possible. Owen had shown her that. He had been patient when she was scared, gentle when she was hurting, and steadfast when she was uncertain. He had loved her through her fear until she was strong enough to love him back without reservation. The years passed in a blur of happy chaos. Will grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and animals. Emma was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and chasing after her brother. Owen expanded the ranch, buying more land, and hiring a few hands to help with the work. Rose started a small school for the ranch children and those from neighboring properties, finally fulfilling her old dream of teaching. When Will was 10 and Emma was 8, Rose gave birth to twin boys. The pregnancy had been unexpected and challenging, and Rose was 40 years old by then, which made the birth more difficult. But Owen was with her through every moment, and their sons, Henry and James, arrived healthy and loud. The ranch was suddenly overflowing with children, and Rose loved every exhausting, joyful minute of it. Margaret's children were grown by then, starting families of their own, and Rose became the beloved aunt to a growing number of nieces and nephews. The ranch house was always full of people, of laughter and conversation and life. It was everything Rose had been afraid to want, everything she had thought was too risky to reach for. One autumn afternoon, when Rose was 45, she stood in the yard watching her children play. Will was 17 now, tall and strong like his father, helping Owen repair a fence. Emma was 15, beautiful and spirited, teaching the twins to ride. Rose felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. This was her life. These were her people. And she had almost missed all of it because she was too afraid to take a chance. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Just how lucky I am, how grateful." "I am the lucky one. You gave me everything, Rose. A second chance at love, at family, at happiness. We gave it to each other." She turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to touch his face. His hair was graying at the temples now, and lines creased his forehead and the corners of his eyes, but to her he was as handsome as the day she first saw him walk into the telegraph office. "You saved me, Owen. You showed me that love is not something to fear, but something to celebrate. You taught me what courage really means." "You saved me too. I was just going through the motions before I met you, existing but not really living. You reminded me what it means to feel, to hope, to love with everything I have." They kissed, a gentle, familiar kiss that still made Rose's heart flutter after all these years. The children called for them, and they broke apart laughing. Hand in hand, they walked across the yard to their family, to the life they had built together through love and faith and courage. That evening, after the children were in bed, Rose sat at her desk and wrote a letter. She had no one to send it to, but she needed to put her thoughts into words to acknowledge how far she had come. "My dear family," she wrote. "Father, Mother, Thomas, I miss you every day. The grief of losing you will never fully leave me, but it has softened into something I can carry. I want you to know that I have found happiness again. I have found love. His name is Owen, and he is everything good and kind and patient. We have 4 beautiful children who fill my days with joy. I have built a life that honors your memory, a life full of the love and laughter you taught me to value. For a long time, I was afraid to live this way. I was afraid that caring about people would only lead to more pain. But I have learned that the pain of loss is worth the joy of love, that being brave enough to open your heart is the most important thing we can do in this life. You would be proud of me, I think. I hope you are watching from wherever you are, and I hope you know that I carry you with me always. Thank you for the years we had together. Thank you for teaching me how to love. And thank you for the strength to survive losing you and to find my way back to happiness. With all my love, Rose." She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her journal. Then she went to the bedroom where Owen was already asleep, his breathing deep and even. She slipped under the covers beside him, and he instinctively pulled her close, even in sleep. Rose rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt utterly content. More years passed, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. The children grew up and started lives of their own. Will married a teacher from town and took over management of the ranch. Emma married a rancher from a neighboring county and moved away, though she visited often with her growing family. The twins went east to college, drawn by a desire to see more of the world, but they always came home for holidays. Rose and Owen grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They had weathered storms, both literal and figurative, had faced loss and hardship and uncertainty. Owen's sister Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep when Rose was 50. Owen himself fell ill with pneumonia one terrible winter and nearly died, and Rose spent sleepless nights by his bedside, praying and hoping and refusing to give up on him. He recovered, though it took months for him to regain his full strength. Through it all, their love remained constant. They had learned to lean on each other, to draw strength from their partnership. Rose no longer feared loss the way she once had. She had learned that grief was inevitable but survivable, that love was worth any cost. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to love anyway. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Rose with a trip back to Taylorsville. They took the train, which was faster and more comfortable than the wagon journey they had made so many years before. The town had grown and changed, but the telegraph office was still there, now run by the young man Rose had trained before leaving. They walked the streets together, Rose pointing out familiar landmarks and telling Owen stories from her time there. They visited the boarding house where she had lived, now owned by strangers. They stood on the porch where Owen had first asked her to come with him, and Rose marveled at how different her life might have been if she had let fear win that day. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had said no?" Owen asked, as if reading her thoughts. "Sometimes, but I try not to dwell on it. I made the right choice, the brave choice, and it has given me everything I could ever want." They returned to Texas the next week, back to the ranch and the life they had built. Rose was 50 years old now, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined from years of sun and laughter, but she felt more alive than she ever had in her youth. She felt fully present in her life, engaged and connected and deeply grateful for every moment. The grandchildren started arriving, and Rose and Owen's home became a gathering place for the extended family. There were birthday parties and holiday celebrations, summer visits that stretched for weeks, and impromptu dinners that lasted long into the night. Rose loved being surrounded by so much life and love. She loved watching her children become parents, seeing them navigate the joys and challenges of raising their own families. One summer evening, when Rose was 55, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a big barbecue. Children ran shrieking through the yard, their laughter echoing across the land. The adults sat in groups, talking and joking and enjoying the warm weather. Rose moved among them, checking on everyone, making sure there was enough food, soaking up the happiness that filled the air. Owen found her standing alone for a moment, watching the scene with a soft smile on her face. He put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Happy, Mrs. Brennan?" "Happier than I ever thought possible, Mr. Brennan. You have created something beautiful here, Rose. This family, this home, this life. It is all because you were brave enough to take a chance. We created it together. I could not have done any of this without you." Will came over with his oldest son, a sturdy 5-year-old with Owen's brown eyes. "Grandma, Papa wants to hear that story again, the one about how you and Grandpa met." Rose laughed. "Again? I have told that story 100 times, but it is his favorite and mine too." So Rose gathered the children around and told them the story once more, about the telegraph office and the shooting and the cowboy who walked in and changed her life forever. About how she had been so afraid of love that she had built walls around her heart, about how Owen had been patient and persistent, showing her through his actions that love did not have to be something to fear, about the choice she had made to leave safety behind and embrace the uncertain adventure of loving another person. The children listened with rapt attention, even though they had heard it all before. When Rose finished, her oldest grandson said, "Grandma, were you really that scared?" "I was, sweetheart. I was terrified. But your grandfather taught me something important. He taught me that being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do the thing that scares you because it is worth doing." "And was it worth it?" asked one of Emma's daughters. Rose looked around at her family, at the children and grandchildren who filled her life with joy, at Owen standing beside her with his hand on her shoulder. "Oh yes, my darling, it was worth everything." As the sun set and the party wound down, families began to depart, loading sleepy children into wagons and promising to visit again soon. Rose and Owen waved goodbye from the porch, standing close together in the gathering dusk. When the last wagon had disappeared down the road, they turned and went inside, to the home they had built together, filled with memories and love. That night, as they lay in bed, Owen said, "Do you remember what I told you that first day in the telegraph office about how I thought you were running from something?" "I remember. I was so angry at you for saying it. But I was right, you were running. Running from your feelings, from the possibility of getting hurt again. I was. And you called me on it. You saw through all my defenses and refused to let me hide. I am glad I was stubborn. So am I." Rose turned to face him, tracing the lines of his face with gentle fingers. "You saved my life, Owen, not by rescuing me from danger, but by showing me how to truly live. You taught me that love is not something to fear, but something to embrace with open arms and an open heart. You taught me that the risk of pain is worth the reward of connection. You taught me what courage really means. You taught me those things too, Rose. We saved each other." They fell asleep in each other's arms, as they had done for 25 years. He was secure in the knowledge that whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. The years continued to roll by, gentle and kind. Rose and Owen grew old together, their bodies slowing, but their love never diminishing. They celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, welcomed more grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. The ranch remained in the family, passed down from Will to his children, a legacy of hard work and love. Rose was 70 years old when Owen fell ill for the last time. It started as a cough that would not go away and progressed to something more serious. The doctor confirmed what Rose had feared, a weakness in his lungs from that terrible bout of pneumonia years ago. He was dying slowly but surely. Rose was devastated, but she did not let fear paralyze her. She had spent nearly half a century learning how to love without fear, and she was not going to abandon that lesson now. She cared for Owen with tenderness and devotion, making his last months as comfortable as possible. They talked about their life together, about all the memories they had made, about how grateful they were for the time they had been given. "I am not afraid," Owen told her one evening, his voice weak but steady. "I have had a good life, a wonderful life. I have loved and been loved. I have no regrets." "Neither do I," Rose said, though tears streamed down her face. "But I will miss you so much." "I will miss you too. But Rose, you have to promise me something. Promise me you will not retreat back into fear. Promise me you will keep living, keep loving, keep being the strong, courageous woman you have become. I promise I will not waste the gift you gave me. I will not forget the lessons you taught me." Owen died on a quiet spring morning with Rose holding his hand and their children gathered around the bed. It was peaceful as death could be. Rose grieved deeply, the pain of loss cutting through her like a knife. But it was a clean pain, not the festering wound of her youth. She had loved Owen with everything she had, and his death, while heartbreaking, did not destroy her. She was stronger now, more resilient. She had learned how to survive loss without losing herself. The family rallied around her, offering comfort and support. Rose accepted their help, allowing herself to lean on them in her grief. She told stories about Owen, keeping his memory alive through words and laughter. She cried when she needed to cry and smiled when she remembered the joy he had brought to her life. In the months after Owen's death, Rose found herself thinking often about the person she had been when they first met. That frightened, damaged woman who was so convinced that love meant only pain. Owen had proven her wrong. Yes, his death hurt terribly, but the 47 years they had spent together, the life they had built, the love they had shared, it was worth every moment of grief. She would not trade those years for anything, not even to avoid this pain. Rose lived another 10 years after Owen's passing. She remained active and engaged, spending time with her children and grandchildren, tending her garden, teaching at the small school she had started. She never remarried, feeling that what she and Owen had shared was too precious to try to replicate. But she was not lonely. She was surrounded by family and friends, by people who loved her and whom she loved in return. On the evening of her 80th birthday, Rose sat on the porch of the ranch house surrounded by 3 generations of family. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold. Her great-grandchildren played in the yard, their laughter filling the air. Her children and grandchildren sat nearby, talking and joking and celebrating her long life. Rose felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude wash over her. She had lived a full life, a life rich with love and meaning. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to love despite it. and she had passed that lesson on to her children and grandchildren, a legacy more valuable than any material wealth. As the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Rose closed her eyes and thought of Owen. She could almost feel his presence beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his voice in her ear telling her how proud he was. She smiled, at peace with her life and her choices. "Thank you," she whispered into the night. "Thank you for showing me that love does not need fear. Thank you for teaching me how to be brave." Rose Garrison Brennan lived to be 83 years old. She died peacefully in her sleep one warm summer night, surrounded by the family she had been so afraid to have. Her funeral was attended by over 100 people, all of them touched by her kindness, her strength, and her willingness to love without reservation. Her great-granddaughter, named Rose in her honor, grew up hearing stories about the woman who had overcome her fear of love and built a beautiful life. Years later, when young Rose faced her own fears and uncertainties, she would remember her great-grandmother's story. She would remember that love does not need fear, that courage is choosing connection over safety, that the risk of pain is worth the reward of a life fully lived. And so the legacy continued, passed down through generations, a legacy of love, of courage, of choosing hope over fear. It was the greatest gift Rose could have given, the culmination of a life transformed by the patient love of a cowboy who refused to give up on her. Owen had shown her that love did not need fear, and she had spent the rest of her life proving him right, living with open arms and an open heart, embracing every moment of joy and sorrow that came her way. In the end, Rose's life was a testament to the power of love to heal and transform. She had started as a frightened, damaged woman, convinced that safety was more important than happiness. But through Owen's patience and devotion, she had learned to let go of her fear and embrace the uncertain adventure of loving another person. She had learned that grief was the price of love, but that love was worth any cost. She had learned that courage was not about being unafraid, but about choosing to love anyway. And in learning those lessons, she had created something beautiful, a family that spanned generations, a home filled with laughter and love, a life that mattered not just to her, but to all the people whose lives she touched. She had taken the broken pieces of her past and built something whole and beautiful, proving that it is never too late to choose courage over fear, love over safety, life over mere survival. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a monument to Rose and Owen's love. Their story was told and retold, becoming a legend in the family, a reminder that the best things in life require courage, that love, while risky, is the only thing that truly matters, that being brave enough to open your heart is the greatest adventure of all. And so Rose Garrison Brennan's legacy lived on, long after her death, not in monuments or wealth, but in the lives of the people she had loved and who had loved her in return, in the courage her descendants found to face their own fears, in the willingness of generation after generation to choose love over safety, hope over despair, life over mere existence. Her fear of love had once been stronger than her need for it. But a cowboy named Owen Brennan had shown her that love did not need fear. And in learning that lesson, Rose had not only saved herself, but had created a legacy of courage and love that would endure for generations to come. She had proven that it is never too late to change, to grow, to become the person you were always meant to be, and that the greatest love story of all is the one where we learn to love without fear, to embrace life with open arms, and to choose courage over caution every single day.